Mission Transition is a veteran-led project started by Still Serving Veterans, a nonprofit that helps transitioning military members with all things employment as they look for civilian jobs. Oh, and it doesn't cost you a dime. Find out more at ssv.org. Anyway, here's retired Navy Chief Dave Lakin.
Hi, I'm Dave Lakin. I'm the National Program Manager of Veteran Employment here at Still Serving Veterans. I'm your host today on the Mission Transition podcast, where we discuss the critical issues affecting service members and their families before, during, and after their transition from active duty back to civilian life. SSV is a nonprofit based in Huntsville, Alabama, with a satellite office in Phoenix City, Alabama. We provide expert job search and transition assistance anywhere there is internet and veterans who need a hand. Today, I'm excited to speak with our President and CEO, U.S. Navy Rear Admiral retired Rich Landolt, with an impressive 32-year tenure in the U.S. Navy, including multiple command roles and strategic postings, international U.S. and NATO defense advisory positions, and national public safety positions. Rich is uniquely suited to lead still serving veterans to help address the critical needs of our nation's veterans. Welcome, Rich, and thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Well, thank you, Dave, and I'm honored to be a part of the inaugural podcast for SSV here that you put together. Thanks.
Awesome. So we'll go right into it. We went through a bunch of possible questions, and I think we got figured out what we want to talk about. So first off, what inspired you to join SSV, and how does your military background influence your role as the CEO?
Well, I was friends with Major General retired Paulette Risher. She was one of the first people I met when I moved to Huntsville, and we stayed in touch through the years. I've lived here 3 years now, and she made it known to me a couple of years ago that at some point she wanted to retire, and I had just left a position at a small tech firm here in Huntsville, and I bumped into her at a veterans happy hour, and she told me it was time that she wanted to leave, and she asked me to apply for her position. And I thought, wow, that's quite an honor, and it's a great organization. I've always felt comfortable around veterans. I mean, it's just a natural affinity. Whenever you meet a veteran in any position, be it an airport or an official organization like this, you immediately have a connection if you're a veteran yourself. You know how to speak their language. I did a number of joint tours while I was active duty, so I'm familiar with the language all the services speak. And you get that way after you've done 4 Pentagon tours. So when she approached me about being her replacement, I just thought, wow, I'd love to have that job. It took a few months. I had to go through an interview process. There was a nationwide search, but to me it was a natural fit, and I think Paulette saw the same thing, as did the board of directors. So I'm coming up on 1 year as of 1 March, and I couldn't be happier.
That's great. When you're in a command role, you have lots of folks under you. A lot of them are transitioning out. The Department of Defense and Department of Labor, the VA, have a lot of expectations on how we exit people from the service. And then, of course, sooner or later, you're going to go through it yourself. So what were your impressions of the veteran employment space before you got out, and then after, you were deep in it?
Well, I spoke to the founder of Still Serving Veterans and agreed with his philosophy that none of the services are very good at helping veterans transition out. I remember when I went through my transition, it was a 1-week course up in Washington, D.C. I was stationed overseas at the time, but it appeared to me that we had hired the smallest bidder. I wasn't very impressed with the presentations. I wasn't impressed with the way they wanted us to approach resume writing, something we do in an outstanding way, by the way. So I just found that this was an opportunity to help veterans that I have a natural affinity for, and I felt very comfortable in this position from day one. And when you're working with veterans, you have that immediate relationship.
So from your perspective, how does SSV address the issues of veteran employment and the challenges in general that veterans face getting out of the service?
I think we are unique in that we look to help veterans transition in 2 or 3 different ways. And as the technology of, say, AI continues to improve, that'll help us improve as well. But when a veteran leaves the service, he's hitting 2 of the 3 major stressors in a person's life. Those three stressors are mainly the death of a loved one, when you're moving, and number three is when you're transitioning into a new job. So the veteran's facing two of those three stressors, and it's our aim to provide stability to that veteran's family by helping him find a job that's a good fit for his experience and personality, so that he's not quitting in the first year. More often than not, a veteran will accept the first job offered to him, whether it's a good fit or not. And one of the statistics I've heard from Paulette, my predecessor, was that if normally a veteran will about 48% of the time switch jobs in his first year out of retirement. Whereas if he takes our mentoring, if he helps and appreciates the tutoring we'll give him on things like resume building, LinkedIn profile building, job search related efforts, and listens to our mentoring on job interview practices, he'll find a job that's a good fit for his personality and lifestyle. And so that 48% of changing in the first year drops to about 15 to 18% if they listen to us. And I think that's just a commendable asset of SSV.
So we're at the beginning of 2004 here, just coming out of a few years of kind of turmoil in the employment space. Uh, a lot of people work from home now versus the number that worked from home 4 years ago. Um, we are partners with Department of Labor, who in the last couple of years has gone to great extent to improve the TAP program, Transition Assistance Program, and has really reached out to us as an industry to find our best practices and incorporate those into the TAP landscape. How do you see SSV changing or adapting in the environment going forward as the environment shifts with the return to office and more people working from home and kind of that employment landscape and method having changed a little bit?
I think, and one of the things I've really learned from you is how we mentor them to manage their expectations. And what I mean by that is that when a veteran gets out, it depends on the community he's in, because the Huntsville community is different from, say, the Washington, D.C. community, which is where I thought I was going to get out. So you've got veterans, and we're particularly guilty of this in the flag general officer community, but we think we're going to be well paid and not have to work many hours. And I couldn't tell you that that's the furthest thing from the truth. But a lot of, say, colonels and lieutenant colonels, they think they're going to get paid well and only have to work 40 hours a week or less. And with the option of, say, working at home, we are very good at managing expectations and letting them know, look, this is about the area, and we'll bracket the amount we think they're going to get paid for their skills. We'll give them a sense of how many hours they will be working and whether it'll be at home or at the office, because I'm seeing more and more of a return to the office atmosphere in most places. Maybe not in D.C., but we're helping people in general, the southeast region of the United States, even though we can help people anywhere on the planet thanks to Zoom, which is a fallout of COVID. So I like the fact that we manage their expectations, and yet we also adjust, as part of your question was the environment. AI is changing so much of the environment, both on the employer side as well as the employee side. And I know you've made great use of ChatGPT to help adjust the resumes to the actual experience they've had in the military and how that translates into civilianese, as I call it. So when it comes to the environment, it's changing. There's technology that's changing faster than we know how to handle it right now, particularly in the AI world. But I like the way we mentor people to manage their expectations.
So I will say I'm guilty of occasionally having thrown very senior officers back to you to help manage that conversation some with the expectations. I can speak to a certain level, but when you start talking Pentagon and international command positions, they don't necessarily want to hear it from me. They want to hear from somebody who's already been through it at a higher level. um, it is part of the conversation always about, you know, what kind of culture do you want to work in? What kind of environment do you want to work in? What kind of people do you want to work with? And Do you want to be rich or do you want to be happy? Is often part of the conversation as people decide, what do I really want to do when I get out? My son's a Marine Corps machine gunner, and he's got out of the Marine Corps with lots of great experience around leadership and time management and self management and discipline and problem solving that are really valuable out in the civilian space. But maybe, hopefully, how to use that machine gun is less the employability factor for him. So when you're talking to senior folks and helping them to decide, do you want to be rich or do you want to be happy? Do you want to work in Washington or do you want to work where your family are or your spouse's family are from? Um, how do you have that conversation?
Right. And as a surface warfare officer, and as you know, we are the great generalists. We have to know a little bit about everything, whereas an aviator needs to know how to fly his aircraft, and a submariner knows how he needs to know how to manage that nuclear power plant of his and the capabilities of a submarine underwater. We in the surface warfare community have a little bit of engineering. We've got a little bit of operations experience. Uh, there are people who, when they get out, they're going to find jobs right away because they have a specific niche that employers are looking for, like supply officers. They're going to get picked up real quick because people are always looking for people who know how to manage logistics or financial manager, or they're a financial manager. That's a big ticket item in the Pentagon as well. So a lot of the people who retire out of the Pentagon get snapped up by defense industry because they have that niche that those companies really need. I found being a surface warfare officer, it's a little more difficult because I've got to prove that I have a specialty that's marketable. I'm sure you've seen that too in the enlisted side. A bosun mate might find a job as a security guard, which is great, but I don't think a high-tech firm is necessarily going to hire him. So that's what I tell a lot of people who are leaving is, what is it specifically, A, you want to do that you have a passion for and that you're willing to learn about if you don't know it already, or B, what is it that, what kind of companies can we help you search for a position in that match your critical capabilities?
So that's a super important part of the whole job search transition role, and that's where SSV really excels. Is that there are services out there that will write you a resume, hand it back to you, and now what do I do? Or you can go to AUSA and feel like you have this giant network, but how do I use it? You know, or you have this skill set coming out of the military, but you want to shift gears and pivot to something, maybe you're this very military specific skill set, but doesn't translate well in civilian world. So I'm going to go be a cyber guy, you know, but all of those things are just pieces in the job search. And so where we excel is mentorship. Can you speak to the importance of and the need for finding and kind of attaching yourself to someone who can mentor you through the whole conversation and get you where you need to be efficiently as quick as possible?
Yeah, we've all had, when you've made CPO, Chief Petty Officer, or senior rank, Lieutenant Colonel, commanders and above in the military, you've had a mentor help you get there. Now you need a mentor to help you navigate the civilian world. That's what I think we do well here. But you've got to be open to mentorship. I'm sure you've got sea stories or war stories in this building where people, they don't believe what you're telling them, or they're not used to adjusting to what the civilian world expects of us. But that kind of mentorship is key. And by the way, I can't say this enough, we do this all for free. Okay, say that a few more times before we finish this podcast. Right. But there are people who will just help you write a resume and then they forget about you. But we follow through. We will always have that one-on-one connection, and we'll help you until you find the right job, whether it takes 2 or 3 jobs for you to get to that good fit job. But as long as you're open to our mentorship, we want to continue to help you.
So the next question on my cheat sheet here is, what advice do you have for veterans who are struggling to find their place in the civilian job market? And I feel like my first thought is that goes back to mentorship. But what do you think?
Yeah. So a couple of thoughts on that. When you're growing up in an organization like the military, when you're in your 20s, you're working your end off trying to get experience, and you're learning the basic tools of your profession, be it an aviator or a submariner or a surface warfare officer or a supply corps officer. You're learning the basic tools. In your 20s, you're going to fly. By the time you hit 30, you're going, what happened to what happened to my 20s? But you're gaining the experience you need to succeed in your profession. The second part of that experience triangle, as I call it, though, is that you're going to learn about being a team player, because we all start off as division officers and we become department heads with divisions under us. Same thing with petty officers. They're in a division at first, and then they're a leader in that division. And then after a department head, you're learning more about the organization writ large and your units, be it a ship or a squadron. So it's the same in corporate America. When you enter a new company as a civilian, you need to learn the basics of what they're looking for, what they want you to do. And then you're going to be part of a team, and you're going to get thrown into it probably very quickly. And that's where your mentorship comes in. So as a sidebar to that, you have to engage in a philosophy of lifelong learning. You need to learn more skills as you continue to grow older and mature, because the technology field, which Huntsville is huge on, is growing so fast that you will struggle to keep up. So learn the basic skills, learn how to be a team player and a team builder as you continue to learn the culture of the organization, new organization you're going to be in as a civilian. And every company has a different culture. Little sea story, but by the time you're 20 years in the Navy, and I'm sure you felt this, you walk onto a ship and within 5 minutes you know whether it's a good ship or not. You can tell if that you've been greeted on the quarterdeck where you entered the ship correctly and with pride, whether the ship's clean or not, and there's no rust.
That old video, the first 72 hours.
That's it, yeah. And I try to bring that finger sense when I go into a company's office around town here, whether that's true of that company. And so I'll bet you can find some interesting stories as you get some of the repeat people who come back to see you after they've given up in their first job. What did it feel like to be in that culture? So you're going to have to learn the culture of that company. That's how I think you need to look at it, is lifelong learning, get a sense of the culture of the company you're in, but also get to know the basics of what that company needs to deliver and how you can help their team deliver it.
So we progress and evolve, as we go through life, through our adult working life, right? There was a time when, as a first class petty officer, I was at what I felt like was the peak of my game. There was nothing you could teach me about how to do what I did on board an aircraft carrier. And at that point, I was the division LPO and the senior section leader and the head of the repair locker team and the head of the first class association and stuff. And so the top of my game, and then I made chief, and I was at the bottom again.
Right.
I spent a relatively short time as chief, 4 years or so, and then I retired and then back at the bottom rung again. But I really excelled and did well for the next 6 years as a program manager, and then I decided to go into consulting, and so shifting gears again, then did that for several years, and now I'm to the point where I've kind of evolved to giving back to my roots as a serviceman. How has your career progression evolved, while you're in uniform, and then brought you to the point where you are today as the head of a nonprofit?
I found when I took my first command, I was a lieutenant commander, and instead of doing the traditional executive officer and later on a commanding officer route to a ship, they gave me what's called a 04 command, lieutenant commander command. So I was a captain of a minesweeper when I was, I think, 34. And all of a sudden I found, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm the mentor of all these people who a few years before I was looking for a mentor, and now I'm that guy. But I also saw my competitors, the other commanding officers of the other minesweeps. I always felt comfortable in command, and I think that's because I had some terrible commanding officers growing up, or executive officers, and sometimes a bad example is the best kind of example you can get at a young age. And I always felt comfortable in command, yet I saw people who they were hand wringers in command, or they worried too much, instead of just relaxing, taking a deep breath, and just doing the right thing. So I learned early on that I was comfortable in command, and I'm glad I got command early in my naval career, because that made me even more comfortable as I rose to higher commands. I went to 05 command, and I found I had more support as a commander command of a ship than I did as an 04 command, where it was just me and the XO who had experience driving the ships. All the rest of the officers in the wardroom were ensigns. So we're teaching them while it's just him and I who are the experienced leaders. I just felt comfortable in command early on, and then later on saw that there was one particular job I thought, man, that would be a fun and a challenge, and that was my Admiral's job in Okinawa, Japan, where I was in charge of all the amphibious ships in 7th Fleet.
And my son.
And your son, that's right. And I saw that job when I was in 05 command, and that Admiral at the time was my boss, and I thought, I'd like his job someday. And so I strove for that, and I figured out that a lot of people don't like to live overseas, but in Japan, every time a ship gets underway, it could be for a critical mission. Whereas in the States, when you leave a concentrated port like San Diego or Norfolk, you're just ramping up and doing local operations in preparation for your 6-month deployment that's coming soon. Whereas when you're forward deployed out of Japan, you're thrown into contingencies at any moment, and we were. Both as an 05 commander and then as a squadron commander that I did out there, and later as an admiral. So I just found that I was comfortable in command at all levels. But yeah, I liked your analogy of going from top to, as a first class petty officer, at the top of your game, to now you're a chief and you're at the bottom of the totem pole again. I was a hot running 06 Navy captain, and then I found I was a 1-star. And my first 1-star tour was in the Pentagon, where I was making coffee.
Right.
You know?
It means a lot in some circles, not so much in others.
That's right. So in the Pentagon, admirals and generals are a dime a dozen. So that's not really a healthy environment for developing your leadership skills, although you can witness good leadership in the Pentagon if you're lucky. But once I got back out in the fleet, my second 1-star tour was I was in charge of 12 ships out in the 7th Fleet, and all of them doing different things. And I've got to maintain the readiness of those ships, man, train, and equip piece, plus have to manage their operational tempo, because sometimes ships get overworked, and we saw the results of that, unfortunately, a few years ago when we had 2 ship collisions in 1 year. Those ships were tired, the crews were tired, and they were overworked. So there's a lot more complexity to the management out in the field than, say, in the Pentagon.
So bringing it back to SSV, we just found out that Call of Duty Endowment has blessed us for another year, and we, of course, we rely on them for a lot of our funding, but we also have other corporate partners that we rely on to help pay the bills and keep the lights on for us. So when you're out talking to them and folks here, what are the new things that we plan on doing over the course of the next year from SSV to help us to stay, dynamic and evolving and relevant in the veteran employment space?
Let me go back to some leadership skills first as I approach that question. And there's 2 types of authority that I've found over the years. One is positional, where there's the captain of a ship. He's got positional authority. He also has some informational authority. But then there's informational authority, where I relied heavily on my chief's mess to fix problems like, say, in the EW world, electronic warfare world, or the radar world. If I had a problem, I would go to them for solutions. So now, fast forward to where I am now, and I'm challenging you all to increase our goal every year, and we met that last year. And we went back to Call of Duty Endowment and asked them to give us an extra $200,000 because we were increasing our goal once again. Now, it was my decision to challenge us, but it was by talking to you, informational authorities like you and Jim King, and the 3 of us had long talks about what is the art of the possible for challenging us. And so that's why we think we can make 200 extra quotas this year. But to do that, you brought to my attention that we need to hire a couple more people. And that's why we went to Call of Duty and asked for a plus up on our $1 million endowment.
In my my coaching capacity, I used to tell people if it's not a little bit scary and a little bit exciting, it's not worth doing often.
That's right.
And so the new goal for the coming year, we also used to want to make sure it's realistic but challenging.
Right.
And this is realistic. It'll be challenging. It's definitely exciting and a little bit scary all at the same
Well,
time.
I forgot who the NASCAR driver was who said that if you're not concerned, then you're not going fast enough.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make you all a little bit uncomfortable.
Sure.
That's how you make progress.
Well, that's how you stay involved and relevant and continue to innovate and to become better, stronger, faster. I want to go back to one thing though. The transition from in uniform to the civilian world and having that conversation about setting expectations. We live here in a town, Huntsville, Alabama. The local base has what has been said often is the highest concentration of 06s anywhere in the military, with the Army Materiel Command and Space Missile Defense and all kinds of things that we have here. We have a lot of 06s. And so we find ourselves having the conversation often about you got to dial it back. When you take off the uniform and hang it up, you got to dial it back a little bit. You're no longer in a command position, and it's important to, when you get to that next command, which is your first civilian job,
Right.
realize that the people around you might have been in that company doing that thing in that command, civilian-wise, for 20 or 30 years, and just be a senior manager. And so with you being an 06 coming out, the recruiter at Raytheon or Northrop Grumman or Huntington Ingalls, you're a senior manager to them. You're not the CEO coming into those organizations. So you got to be willing to humble yourself, dial it back, observe for a while before you just go in and start hard charging, getting ready for the next inspection, so to speak, like we were doing in civilian world. You're there for 18 months to 2 years, and then you're going to be out. So you got to make an impact while you're there. Civilian world sees things in terms of years and sometimes decades. So what do you think about that, dialing it back?
I was down in our satellite office, Phoenix City, last summer, and Reg Gooden has a great team down there, and I sat in on one of their transition courses. And one of the first things they do is everybody goes around the room, introduces themselves and what they did in the Army. And I know you've seen this coming from a mile away, but they all stand up and go, yeah, I was an Army, I was a MOU 1003 artilleryman, and Reg and his team go, okay, time out right there. Look, folks, you need to get rid of the old language and learn the new one that you may be speaking at your civilian corporation that you're going to find a job with. So you need to dial it back first in talking military speak, because not everybody knows all the acronyms, and there's a lot of them out there. Second is that, and I was told this when I went through my transition class, is you don't get bonus points for a 9-to-5 job by showing up at 7 a.m. I know we all did that in the military, but you got to dial it back and pace yourself and expect a different rate of speed in the civilian world than what we're used to in the military. We spend a lot of time on adrenaline rushes in the military, and that isn't always healthy. Don't do that when you're in the civilian world. There's usually a reliable and timeline to get things done that's realistic.
That's great. Well, so we're coming up on the end here. Do you have any final thoughts for folks or predictions for the coming year?
We're going to make our quota, I've no doubt. We're already looking at people to hire and expand.
No pressure.
Our net. No pressure, Dave. I know you can do it. As you know, we can't pay people a lot of money. They do it for the mission because they enjoy helping other veterans and helping people in general. We want those families to get stable as soon as they can, and the mother or father veteran having a job that she enjoys going to, and that allows her to spend more time with her family. So I love being here. I love coming to work every day, and that's the question I ask myself every day: is do I enjoy going to work? I don't need to work, but I enjoy working. And when you've got a company that has this sort of mission, you really enjoy coming to work. And less turnover, the better.
So not polarizing at all. 2 days ago was the Super Bowl. Who'd you root for?
I was rooting for San Francisco, but
I was rooting for the Patriots, but they weren't really in the game this year. So.
well, I grew up in New Jersey, so I'm a Jets and Giants fans, but they've just been awful the last few years.
Well,
But how about those Florida Gators?
the who? Thanks so much for being here today for our inaugural launch of our podcast. Appreciate you taking time out of your very busy day to spend time with us. If you need help with your job search, whether it's you or a family member or your spouse, if you need help with a veteran job search, just be sure to call us. Look at us up at ssv.org and stay tuned here for more podcasts, more information on the veteran employment space.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Mission Transition, a podcast for veterans. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, or maybe even want to be on the podcast, shoot us an email at social@ssv.org.